On the night of the 18th of March 1990, two men dressed as policemen enter the Isabella Gardner Museum in Boston. They tie up the two night guards and walk directly to the Dutch salon where Rembrandt's works hang.
A part of our heritage has been stolen from us. It's a barbaric act.
Some of the paintings.
The thieves cut 2 Rembrandt paintings and 10 other works out of their frames. The paintings are worth $500 million. It is the biggest art heist in history.
Rembrandt ever painted.
Already a highly sought-after painter in his day, the Dutch master still enriches the world's most important collections today. Who was this baroque genius who has enchanted people through the centuries?
Rembrandt was not only a miraculous talent as a painter, but he also had a mighty mind.
The Dutch artist seems to capture people's souls when he paints. His provocations are extremely modern.
When he painted a naked woman, for example, he did not depict her as an object of male desire, but as a victim of sexual abuse. He was one of the most innovative painters who has ever lived.
Today, scientists are peering beneath the rich layers of paint, trying to uncover the secret of Rembrandt's magic.
He was very conscious of himself as a kind of conjurer, as a magician, a craftsperson, but he was also aware that there were certain tricks of the trade.
For a time, the master leads a life blessed by light, soon to be overcast by the darkest of shadows.
They hanged him. The code thief, they hanged him.
Wonderful.
Rembrandt van Rijn has been waiting for this day for weeks. He has received an extraordinary commission. The surgeons of Amsterdam want to be painted by him. It is to be the young artist's first major work. To do this, he has to leave his studio and take part in a post-mortem.
Anatomy sessions were quite a public spectacle in the Netherlands at the time. There was music, people brought food and incense because the corpses stank. So it was really a very, very big show.
Only male criminals were dissected.
This man, contaminated by sin, he is now able, after his death, to do an honorable
Nicolas
task.
Tulp is Amsterdam's leading surgeon. He and his colleagues pay a lot of money for Rembrandt to portray their work on God's creature, man, for posterity.
To better understand the wonders of the
But how to portray a random group of surgeons and their lecturer in the right light? A tricky task for the young painter. After all, his clients want to be recognized clearly in the finished oil painting. All this during the spectacular autopsy in which Tulp exposes the flexor muscle of the arm. Rembrandt comes up with an ingenious trick for this. He practically stacks the surgeons on top of each other. However, the surgeons are not the main attraction in his portrayal.
What do we see in the center? The dead criminal, the corpse. At its core, the picture is dedicated to him. Even if it makes a very brutal impression at first, it shows the executed criminal as a human being capable of suffering.
And creates one of the most fascinating works in art history. But Rembrandt van Rijn dares even more. He has only recently moved to Amsterdam from the small town of Leiden. Now he is using the commission to make a name for himself. He cheekily shapes the belly button of the corpse as an R. The artist's signature also speaks volumes. Like the great masters, he only signs his work with his first name. He simply omits the Van Rijn.
There's also this sense of ego because, you know, we know Michelangelo and Raphael and Titian, but for a Dutch guy to just use his first name is quite unique. But with Rembrandt, you know, immediately it's got to be that guy. in a way, it's like a neon sign on your paintings.
The young Rembrandt will make Nicolaas Tulp immortal with his painting. For the artist, the anatomy session is the starting point for a fabulous career that will lead him to the bright and dark sides of existence. The simple miller's son will revolutionize art.
If you go across the range of the human experience, there will be part of Rembrandt's oeuvre that will speak to that. Questions of love, questions of sexuality, questions of power, of violence, of loneliness.
Rembrandt van Rijn entered the world in Leiden in 1606. His ancestors named themselves after the river that flows through the city and past his parents' mill towards the sea.
I'm convinced that the mill as an object which reflected the light in a certain way was very important for young Rembrandt. He must have been attracted by the sun coming through these little windows, and this is of course a fascinating image which would have been in the eyes and the minds also of the famous painter that later on painted portraits.
The writer Onno Blom goes in search of the origins of the magician of light and shadow in his own hometown.
The first time the name of Rembrandt is written down on a document is in this book of the Leiden University. And in 1620, Rembrandt Hermanni Leidensis, who was the son of Herman from Leiden, Studio Literarum, was going to be studying the letters, the arts, on this university. He was Anno 14, he was 14 years old, a little boy with curly hair. And he lived with his parents, apud parentis. I think that he came here to the academy with his father, and the rector sat down and he put, for the first time in history, his name on paper. So this is magic for someone who loves Rembrandt.
The education that the craftsman's son received at the oldest university in the Netherlands would also directly influence his later works.
If you would have to say who Rembrandt really was, then he was a storyteller, a brilliant storyteller. All these stories from the Greek myth and from the Bible, Rembrandt painted afterwards in a very special way.
Biblical scenes or the depiction of ancient sagas, such as the rape of Persephone, become gripping stagings of human tragedies.
They even invented scenes that are not in the Bible. So, you know, he could really play with the insightfulness that he had.
In keeping with the motto, nulla dies sine linea, since his earliest childhood, not a day goes by that Rembrandt does not paint or draw. He devotes himself to his passion. First, he opens his own studio in Leiden. Then, he tries his luck in Amsterdam, Holland's commercial metropolis. The young artist's light shines brightly. His exceptional talent is quickly recognized in the city.
God almighty, can't one have some peace around here? Go!
The influential art dealer Hendrik van Eilenburg promoted the willful painter.
Rembrandt.
What is it? I must crack on.
He arranges his first commissioned portraits, including that of the surgeons around Dr. Tulp.
I've brought someone with me.
But more importantly, he introduces Rembrandt to his cousin Saskia, who is in town for a visit.
Good day. Is it true that light and shadow come alive on your canvas? At least, that's what my cousin tells me.
Your cousin tells you that?
May I?
We can almost imagine Saskia Eilenburg as a fairy tale figure who suddenly entered Rembrandt's life. She was young, she was beautiful, she was rich, she was noble. She was actually more than Rembrandt, the miller's son, could ever have expected from life.
Naturally, it's not finished yet, but perhaps you can understand on principle what I'm aiming for.
What is that?
That's a secret.
Saskia is 20 years old. She comes from Friesland, from a traditional family of Calvinist solicitors and politicians.
She then leaves her Frisian homeland and moves to Amsterdam with him, and she really proves to be a stroke of luck for him in every respect. She probably often had his back, if only because, as a woman from high society, she had a better knack for dealing with well-heeled clients.
Will you be long? It's so cold without you in bed.
I still need a bit.
Not all the Eilenburgs were enthusiastic about Saskia's choice.
I think you need some yellow.
Oh. Hey!
You can't
Just
get
you wait!
me! You can't get me!
About 3 months after their first encounter, the two become engaged and are married a year later. Saskia chooses the magician of light and shadow. Rembrandt is also popular among thieves. His works have been stolen from museums more than 81 times. One of his portraits is even called the Takeaway Rembrandt. It has already been stolen 4 times and reappeared each time. The Stockholm art heist kept the world on tenterhooks in December 2000. 3 men break into the Swedish National Museum with machine guns and steal 2 Renoirs and a Rembrandt. As a decoy, they set 2 cars on fire and then escape by speedboat. In 2005, the art treasures were returned to the museum. Such luck has so far eluded the Isabella Gardner Museum in Boston. The 13 masterpieces stolen from there have been missing since 1990. A reward of $10 million has been offered for information on their recovery. Only one real Rembrandt remains in the museum. It shows the artist at the age of 23, one of his extraordinary self-portraits.
Immediately you see these dark, dark, dark pupils of the eyes looking out at us. And I think he knows that the way people look at pictures, they'll be struck. It will always look like the eyes follow you. But in this case, it's the whole world of light and shadow that's going to follow you. So it's really very alive. And Rembrandt is a painter of that epiphany in the double sense. Both, it's an epiphany of his person, his coming to light, and it's an epiphany because it's the light that does it all.
Over 80 self-portraits by Rembrandt have survived. In these baroque selfies, the artist perfects his portrayal of light and poses in a wide variety of costumes, from nobleman to beggar.
Rembrandt's later self-portraits, they're brutal because they're so realistic. You know, if he's got a big nose because of drinking, or if he's got yellow cheeks because his liver doesn't work anymore, or if it's warts or whatever, he will paint it. He doesn't do any concession to reality, as his philosophy was to really look at nature. So there is not a choice of making himself more beautiful, because that means that you have to fantasize about something that isn't there.
A stark contrast to his contemporary Peter Paul Rubens, for example, who, although already over 60, stylizes himself as a youthful, elegant artist. But is Rembrandt's honesty perhaps only an effect he plays with?
Even if you come so close, you don't really know who Rembrandt is. He comes forward, if you look at the painting, a self-portrait, as a fascinating person, but also he stays a mystery.
The works themselves also raise questions. In recent decades, there have been repeated doubts about the authenticity of some of the paintings, such as the man with the gold helmet. Art historians subjected it to intensive analysis. In 1986, they published their sensational result: not an original Rembrandt.
Don't apply it quite so thickly. The light is here on the outermost edges.
The scientists had noticed that the gold did not correspond to Rembrandt's usual painting style.
Better, yeah.
The picture was probably painted by one of the more than 50 apprentices Rembrandt taught. In recent years, however, some new authentic Rembrandts have also come to light. The person responsible for that is Jan Six.
I talk about him so much and I look at his work so much, and every day he sort of bumps into my life. He's ever present. So in a sort of an academic way or in a philosophical way, I'm almost married to Rembrandt.
Rembrandt is closely linked to Jan Six's family history. One of his ancestors was a friend of the master.
The first image I really remember is that little etching of Rembrandt sort of looking like that. And I think I tore it out, age 8 or 9, and hung it in my room. And he would always look at me. And from that very moment, I loved it.
While working for Sotheby's in London, Jan Six comes across a work by an alleged Rembrandt pupil in a catalogue in 2007. Auction price? £1,500. His client buys the painting. It later turns out to be a self-portrait by Rembrandt. In 2013, the Getty Museum in Los Angeles buys it for $16 million. And it is not the only time that Jan Six demonstrates his sensational instinct for Rembrandt's magic. Half of this biblical scene was painted over in the 19th century. Once again, Six believes he can detect the master's hand.
I saw a catalogue from a German auction house, and I went to Cologne. I saw the real painting, and I saw that parts of it was overpainted, but the figures in the background really looked original, especially that little boy looking out. And that face is really Rembrandt's face. So at that very moment, I decided for myself, this has to be by Rembrandt.
This time, Jan Six has to raise €1.5 million with an investor to buy the painting at auction. But the real adventure is just beginning. What lies beneath the painted-over areas? An X-ray promises more figures painted by Rembrandt's hand. Should one dare to remove the upper layers?
You see the X-ray, something is there. And so you ask the restorer, can you just take a little bit of the background away? And then first they say, well, really? And then you say, yeah, try. And so the first centimeters go off and the color comes out. And I remember, because it was done in England, I remember they called us and they said, there's color, you're right, there's color. And I said, continue. And they said, it's so scary. And I said, no, you have to do this because it's like Indiana Jones. It's like archaeology, it's an adventure. You can see in the right side, this is halfway the restoration, that the red color comes off and that the purple comes out. Also, you can see that the figure behind Christ is now gone, and the three figures that we're showing on the X-ray are actually emerging, they're coming out. You can see halfway that the little boy is losing his dress, and actually underneath a new body is emerging. I remember when these naked buttocks came out, we were so excited, and then we looked at each other and said, oh God, somebody thought this was a bit strange to paint the naked bum of a young kid. But at the same time, it's so natural, it's so real. I mean, this the innocence of young children. And of course, Rembrandt understood the Bible so well. And this whole story is about the innocence of the world. And what is more innocent than a naked child? So in a way, it started to make far more sense.
Although the young Rembrandt only half completed his painting, his pronounced ego and sense of humour are clearly visible.
Rembrandt positions himself above Jesus, and he's looking at you. He's saying, I did it. Here I am. So it shows that he's very eager and he's very self-confident. And I love that, because when you're in your 20s, early 20s, you know, when you can start driving a car and when you can do all sorts of grown-up stuff, you're ambitious, you're experimental, and you're always bluffing. You're always a bit too big for life.
With this attitude, Rembrandt encounters an environment that offers him everything in abundance. When he sets foot in Amsterdam, the city is in its heyday. It is the golden age of the Netherlands, which becomes the dominant maritime and trading power in the middle of the 17th century.
In Amsterdam in particular, the riches of the world were quite literally piled up. Gold and ivory from Africa, tobacco and furs from North America, sugar and cocoa from South America, and pepper and nutmeg from Asia.
The population of Amsterdam grows from 40,000 to 210,000 during Rembrandt's lifetime. Living quarters are created at lightning speed. The rich merchants invest in real estate. This is how the Canal Belt comes into being. The city literally bursts at the seams several times. Amsterdam is booming. Ordinary workers here earn twice as much in the mid-17th century compared to those in Cologne, for example. Rembrandt is a child of his time, living it up, with a penchant for extravagance. He was particularly fond of exotic objects from faraway countries.
Interestingly, Rembrandt's adult life coincides exactly with the height of the Golden Age. If there was ever an artist who was born at the right time in the right country, it was Rembrandt.
Painters enjoy a high reputation in the city, and Rembrandt relishes his growing popularity. The melting pot of Amsterdam provides him with new motifs every day.
My name is Rembrandt van Rijn.
An estimated 5 million paintings were produced in the 17th century. And it's unique that at that time it wasn't just a small avant-garde, an elite that was interested in contemporary art, as is the case today, but broad sections of the population. Foreign visitors were always surprised that one could buy pictures at the market stalls in the Netherlands, and that carpenters and butchers had pictures hanging at home.
At that time, works of art were often even accepted as currency in Amsterdam. And in the pulsating world metropolis, the name Rembrandt soon ranks right at the top.
Keep still.
But I am holding still.
Yes, too still.
Merchants like Martin Solmans, who had amassed fabulous wealth through trade, had themselves immortalized by the artist more and more often, for no one painted people like Rembrandt.
With almost every Rembrandt portrait, you see something that is uncompromising. Sometimes you get a sense that it was production and the bills had to be paid, but almost always you get a sense that there is a new invention to be brought out. And Rembrandt is giving himself a challenge, because that is how he sees art, at least the art that he makes.
By incorporating accessories, for example, Rembrandt also tells stories in his portraits, and he makes up small actions that bring movement into the picture, a masterly trick. In this way, static poses become a lively snapshot that he captures on canvas. Martin Solmans is to marry Opien Koppit, the wealthy daughter of a gunpowder merchant. The wedding painting of the two is to be more impressive than anything that has been done before. Until now, a life-size painting was reserved for royalty.
Many of his works have their explanation in his singular devotion to being and performing the role of a great artist. Even a king couldn't get an audience with him and had to wait until he was ready and had finished what he was working on.
In 2016, the wedding portraits of Martin and Opien become a sensation. After 400 years in private hands, they are offered on the market. France and Holland join forces and acquire the duo for 160 million euros. Now you can admire Martin and Opien, sometimes in the Paris Louvre and sometimes in Amsterdam's Rijksmuseum. The couple moves every 5 years. Petria Nobel, senior conservator at the Rijksmuseum, was asked to assess the condition of the paintings before the purchase in the private chambers of the Rothschild family.
The paintings hung in a bedroom with open doors onto the garden. There was a busy street not far away, from the garden. So I think over the years, there was actually a sort of a layer of sort of grimy soot that had accumulated on top of the paintings.
Together with her team, Petria Nobel freed the couple from centuries of yellowing, repaired damage, and restored them to their original appearance. It is precisely in the tiniest details that Rembrandt's genius, and also his inventiveness, is revealed.
What is so stunning is that the general impression, from a distance, is that this is a real lace collar. I mean, it really gives you the impression that that he depicted that in a lot of detail. But in fact, when you get up close, it's nothing more than just little dabs and licks of black paint on top of this white layer.
Contrary to what one would expect, Rembrandt did not paint white lace on a black background, but the other way round. He was a master of illusion, who knew all the tricks and invented new ones. But he was unrivaled in capturing the essence of those he portrayed.
The amazing thing is that you somehow believe that you're actually looking at the person. With other painters, they're often just lifeless mannequins. But with Rembrandt, you think you know the character of the person. Sometimes you have the feeling that they're still alive, that they could walk through the doorway at any moment. You can't really explain it. It remains somewhat mysterious.
That person is really gazing, and you really have a sense that something is going on. Because you get this interaction. He sort of hooks you in, and he takes you along. And that's quite rare for an artist.
He portrays fear, he reveals melancholy. He actually lays bare everything known to human existence.
In the Rijksmuseum, just a few meters away from Martin and Opien, is Petria Nobel's new workplace. She is in charge of Operation Nightwatch. Under this name, one of the most comprehensive restoration projects in art history began in July 2019. Rembrandt's monumental painting, his most famous work, The Nightwatch, is being examined with unprecedented detail.
The sheer size of the painting has meant an enormous amount of challenges involved in researching the painting, but also just in simple things like how do you go about, digital photography of such a large painting? How are you going to capture all those images?
Ultra-high resolution scans provide the basis for the restoration of Rembrandt's masterpiece, which will take years.
It's the national painting, you could say. It's like, it's in the Rijksmuseum, it's hanging like the top piece on an altar. It's like the temple of art, and the best piece in it is the Nightwatch.
I don't know if that is his best painting, but it doesn't really matter, because it's clearly the greatest endeavor. It was really showing this is what I am capable of, and it's a pretty awesome big picture.
The guard of Amsterdam, who would otherwise be sitting kind of in a static portrait, are suddenly coming up to us. The picture has this sense of momentariness.
You can hear the gunfire, you can hear the drum beats, you can almost smell the gun smoke. This image is highly sensorial.
The illustrious group is typical of Rembrandt's time, a marksman's guild that provides security in Amsterdam as a vigilante group. The giant of art immortalized himself once again in this monumental work. Petria Nobel is still impressed by Rembrandt's painting technique, even after many years.
He's using different kinds of tricks that any other artist does. You have two details of the painting right next to one another. Of course, the lieutenant built up in this really thick impasto in multiple layers. And when you get even closer, you can sort of see, you know, that he's really daubed that paint on. I mean, under a microscope, it almost looks like ice cream. Right next to it, you have this really summary execution of the dog. The dog sort of is meant to kind of blend away in the background, where the lieutenant is meant to come forward. That's how he builds the composition and creates that suggestion of depth in the painting.
Few people know that the Nightwatch was originally much larger. When it was transferred to Amsterdam City Hall in 1715, something happened that would be unimaginable today. It doesn't fit through the doors, so the mayor has the work trimmed on all four sides. No one knows what these missing parts look like, but at least a copy of Rembrandt's masterpiece exists, made by the painter Gerrit Lundens in 1650. It is the basis for a spectacular project.
There are several things that are present in the Lundens, but missing in the Nightwatch. Apparent difference is that on the Nightwatch, this figure here wearing the helmet has been cut off, whereas in the Lundens, we see his arm back here, and in fact, there are two missing figures, and if you look closely, there's even a little boy down here looking over the wall.
The missing sections will be reconstructed with the help of deep learning algorithms. To do this, the technology is first fed hundreds of details from both images.
I use this alignment between the Lundens and the Nightwatch to basically send the neural network to art school. So what you're seeing here in these examples is a little tile from the Lundens and then the same tile from the Nightwatch. And so this is basically a quiz that we're giving the neural network. We say, all right, paint this like Rembrandt would paint it. And this is its best guess.
After hundreds of thousands of cycles, the missing parts of Rembrandt's Nightwatch are then calculated from the data. And this is the result.
So in here, in the middle, you see the Nightwatch. And then along the edges, you can see the extension from the neural reconstruction.
In this way, the museum creates a unique reconstruction of the Nightwatch, which gives an idea of how Rembrandt probably really planned his work. And it enables new insights, especially with regard to the positioning of the figures.
This strip of about 60 centimeters from the left side has a huge impact on the original composition. We get a great sense of how Rembrandt used, perspective in the painting. I mean, the fact that we now the figure is holding onto this railing, I mean, certainly, leads you much more into the composition, and there's much more of a sense that the figures are now not in the center of the painting, but actually off-center.
Since the additions were made by computer and not by Rembrandt's hand, in the future, the Nightwatch will be displayed in the familiar form that enchants millions of visitors to the Rijksmuseum every year. When Rembrandt receives the commission for the Nightwatch, he is 34 years old. He is at the height of his creative powers. Amsterdam's elite are at his feet. His marriage to Saskia has granted him a life of wealth. He acquires a stately home. which he fills with art from all over Europe and his collection of historical and exotic exhibits. He captures this flight of fancy in a self-portrait. It shows him and Saskia as a couple who enjoy life.
Rembrandt was sometimes criticized for his extravagance. For example, his wife Saskia's relatives accused him of throwing money out of the window with both hands. Interestingly, he didn't deny this at all. He only said, "Yes, we can afford it because we've been so richly blessed by God Almighty with money and goods."
Saskia's dowry of 40,000 guilders was used up only a few years after the wedding. Rembrandt knew better than anyone, where there is light, there must be darkness. And the darkness that fell over his imposing house was long and gloomy. Saskia gave birth to 3 children. All 3 died after a few days or weeks. Then finally one son, Titus, survives.
Look what Papa's doing.
Rembrandt, Titus scolds you. You should paint faster.
Papa needs a bit of quiet.
Their happiness is short-lived. Saskia dies at the age of only 30, when Titus is 1 year old. The 4 pregnancies had taken their toll on her, and tuberculosis was most likely her death sentence. Saskia's death is the turning point in Rembrandt's life. His masterpiece, the Nightwatch, is almost finished. He does not yet suspect it, but his glory days are over forever.
Saskia's death was a great shock to him. This is reflected on the one hand in the moving drawings he made of her in the last phase of her life, but also in the fact that he immediately fell into a deep creative crisis afterwards and painted almost nothing for 10 years.
Stephanie Buck and her colleagues at the Copperplate Etching Museum in Dresden are studying Saskia nearly 400 years after her death. Just as he was able to create a monumental painting like the Nightwatch, Rembrandt also captured private details with great sensitivity.
We are sitting in front of one of the most beautiful drawings by Rembrandt ever. At least it is one of the most beautiful for me. This is his wife Saskia, a very intimate format. His way of portraying life is so captivating. The way the pupil is positioned, the relationship between the nose and the corner of the mouth. These are just tiny dots, tiny little strokes.
A spot of light on Saskia's head has aroused the interest of the researchers. Did Rembrandt subsequently correct the spontaneous sketch? A technical analysis might shed light on the matter. The valuable artwork is irradiated with different light wavelengths that do not damage the unique etching.
Ja, also ist doch gut, wie das Licht da gesetzt ist. Das ist keine Korrektur.
In the infrared image, we could clearly see with very long wave light that this brightness around the face was in fact applied with a watery chalk, so that he did not make a correction, but added an additional source of light afterwards. This causes Saskia to naturally shine out of the picture more strongly. And it was obviously important for him to set this light again in this way.
When it comes to lighting design, Rembrandt was the absolute master. Even today, camera technicians use his methods to set the scene for faces, as seen here in the interview with art historian Franziska Gottwald and David de Witt, chief curator of the Rembrandt House in Amsterdam.
When you look at his character studies and depictions of heads, it's often noticeable that the treatment of light, or how light is depicted, or how a head is illuminated, seems unusual.
Gottwald and de Witt wanted to find out how Rembrandt succeeded in creating atmosphere through the use of light. Even when he had to carve the motif into the metal plate with a needle, he mastered the play of light like no one else. For example, in this etching. The scientists discover something astonishing in connection with this piece. Rembrandt reveals the secret of how he influenced the light in his studio, with a fabric construction over the window.
The cloth increases the diffusion of light in the room, making it softer and dispersed. But you can also see that these windows are blocked at the bottom. The aim is to have light from above, not only from the window, but also from above.
In this way, the master creates a light that gently envelops his models.
He uses light not only to create space, but also saw the potential of using light alone to create or bring out emotional states more intensely.
After Saskia's death, Rembrandt withdrew from the world. His stubbornness and undiplomatic nature meant that he hardly received any more commissions in the following years. Court records tell of ever greater financial problems. He spends more time in nature now.
The etchings, when you look at them the first time, you do think that a lot of it is just dark scribble. Sometimes there's nothing but darkness. And if you allow yourself to look just a little bit longer, all of a sudden, bam, you see it's not all dark.
There are an incredible number of things to discover in this landscape. On the one hand, these windmills that we can recognize, of course, but also lots of people. We have a farmer and a farmer's wife. Then we have a draftsman on the horizon on the right. And we have a very mysterious pair in the foreground, perhaps lovers.
Rembrandt's contemplation of nature has always been directed towards the human, and even the very human. His candor shocks. His nudes vex his contemporaries.
The print is famous for the fact that it was also criticized for being so candid, when people in the Academy thought that one had to follow norms and rules. And here, for example, you can see the imprint that garters make, and that was simply not considered appropriate for a nude. This is a corporeality that simply reminds us that bodies are like that. Whether that's brutally honest is something you have to think about, because who is being cosseted? When we look in the mirror in the morning, we're not cosseted either. So it's a detail that brings the vitality of life itself into the etchings.
Rembrandt has not lost his sense of humor, even as a widower, nor has he lost his knack for telling stories.
At the back, in the distance, you can see a reaper cutting the grain. This means that we, as viewers, know that, of course, this burst of passion will probably be over quickly when they are discovered.
The artistic obscenities fit in with the slovenly life Rembrandt leads in the eyes of Amsterdam society. For years, he had a love affair with the nurse Geertje, who raised his son Titus, and he made promises of marriage to her.
Imagine that this is all water here. You're standing in water.
In water?
Splash, splash, splash.
When he turns to the prettier and younger maid Hendrikje, who also frequently models for him, things come to a head.
Oh, Rembrandt. The other side too.
The jilted Geertje sues Rembrandt and wins alimony in court. He takes revenge and has her locked away for 5 years in a women's penitentiary.
Geertje Dirks is the dark chapter in Rembrandt's life. If we look at his behaviour today, even if we take into account the standards of his time, we have to conclude that the same person who created such tremendously sensitive works of art could be harsh and unforgiving in his personal life.
But Hendrikje Stoffel stays with Rembrandt. She becomes the second important woman at his side. Together they have another daughter, Cornelia.
Hendrikje Stoffels was a very simple woman who couldn't even read and write properly. But she must have been very astute, because when Rembrandt had to declare bankruptcy in 1656, Hendrikje founded an art trading company and took Rembrandt on as an employee so that he could concentrate entirely on his art. And that is how his legendary late work came about.
The late Rembrandt artworks break with the conventions of the time. He scales everything down to the essential, radical and modern from today's point of view.
Rembrandt works very intensively with individual blobs of colour, and sometimes he simply makes use of our brain's ability to complete something that's not even there. He even omits some things, and we still know that it's a hand. That is the crease of an arm, because we complete the picture ourselves. So he's concerned with showing a state of mind or showing a state of being and somehow conveying that to us. That's ultimately something that modern painting, especially Impressionism, picks up on later.
The art critics of his time despised this way of painting. But Rembrandt's way of painting points far into the future. Can artificial intelligence copy the genius? An advertising agency commissioned computer scientists to teach algorithms to paint like Rembrandt. To do this, they had their computers analyze all 340 of Rembrandt's paintings.
It is true that Rembrandt is kind of the pop star of Dutch arts and culture and the Dutch masters, and we could have gone with Van Gogh maybe as well. But the important thing with Rembrandt is there's a lot of data available.
The AI drew its conclusions from millions of data. What does a Rembrandt nose look like? How far away are the cheekbones from the eyes? The algorithms analyzed the facial parts and then created their own work. The biggest challenge remained: how to print Rembrandt's voluminous color application on a canvas, sometimes with centimeter-thick layers of paint. The technicians mastered this hurdle as well and developed their own printing process. The result was presented to the public and to an extremely skeptical art scene as the next Rembrandt.
One reaction was quite outspoken, which was, I would be the antichrist of the art world. And there's a very famous Rembrandt expert who actually came and who had his magnifying glass, and he looked at the painting and he said, "This is prostitution of Rembrandt." Do we want, as humans, compete with AI when it comes to art, or is that meant for humans, and is this just to help create new and more beautiful things? And I think it's the latter.
What would the master himself have thought?
If Rembrandt were to see the recreated Rembrandt today, he would probably grab his brush and fix it.
Rembrandt survives his son Titus and Hendrikje, the woman who stood by him even without a marriage certificate. Both died of the plague, which raged twice in Amsterdam between 1660 and 1670. In the end, he lives a secluded and lonely life, with only his daughter, Cornelia, looking in on him from time to time. His contemporaries did not know what to make of his painting style.
There is a strong sense that Rembrandt himself knew that he was painting in order to be timeless in not a metaphysical sense, but like in a historical sense. Timeless in the sense that his work will always look fresh, deep into the future.
I do think that the more and more we start to understand more about ourselves, about our own ego, and about our own position in life and how we treat reality, we start to understand more and more about Rembrandt. I think he was just light years ahead in observing.
But still, even if you know him so well, if you come so close, he stays a mystery.